Hello, everybody. Welcome to our second Lighthouse Cycle meeting. We have a full house and good agenda going. So if we could, we've got everybody following along, I think, on the Etherpad. Looks like we're taking some notes, and we've built up a reasonable agenda. Any other additions to the agenda before we kick into the meeting in full? So just as a note, we actually made some progress on the matrix score. John Griffiths and I sat down after the TC meeting, the one before last, and completed all of the Cinder scores. And as you might expect, most of those ended up scoring in the is core category, but a lot of them are admin, and so I think there's only one real change that came out of that. And that leaves the, boy, I don't know where the link is. Not the, anybody have the link handy for the matrix? It's worth putting up here at least as a status thing. Here it is. Yeah, so they're already sorted in. So that means that we have these things that we don't know what they are. That Troy needs to help us figure out what they are. Mark and Troy, we're going to talk about that. And then we have the object store items to resolve. And that I think is going to come up in our designated sections topic and probably the face-to-face also. So I'm actually going to throw it into the face-to-face agenda. Might as well just throw it.
Hey, Rob, do you know if John Dickinson's going to make it to the face-to-face?
I don't. That's a reasonable thing that we should reach out and get him there.
Yeah, he lives in San Francisco, so I'll just ping him right now.
Could you? Thank you.
Yeah.
We have to resolve the TBD. Okay. Oh, actually, if people would, let's actually put expected. From that perspective, Josh, we should do this. So if you're planning to come to the face-to-face agenda, the meeting, it would be useful for us to get a head count so we know to wait for you.
That's my office, right? Or are we doing this at HP?
I don't think we had resolved that yet.
Yeah, so we're happy to host, and I think HP is hosting the bylaws meeting.
Yes.
Okay. We have moved, so I'll send out an email with the new office address.
Cool. And please just post it in there. Actually, I think it's already in here.
Oh, cool. Let me double check.
126 post. And we need to set the time too.
5th floor.
Got it. Yeah. We need to figure out timing. If it's morning or afternoon, basically.
Yeah.
You're only available in the morning, I think, right?
Where do you want us to? Do you want us to indicate the Etherpad, or?
Yes, please.
I've blocked off 11 to 3.
Oh, sorry. In the second, sorry. Let me. Okay. Yeah. There's another Etherpad for the agenda for the face-to-face. 9 to 3, you said?
11 to 3. I could make it 10 or 10:30 if that's helpful, but do you want to make it 10? 10 to 3?
Let's potentially block off the 10 to 3, and then we'll see what how much we have on the agenda. I suspect we will need it.
Yeah.
If we actually, if we start cracking through some of this.
Okay.
Okay, I think that, and we're jumping ahead a little bit on the agenda because I think we're going to need to talk about the designated sections. We should probably do the agenda last, but I don't mind jumping back and forth so that we can, as we go, add items to the agenda and flush things out there.
Okay.
Other comments about the matrix core?
I think it seems like we should be able to finish it up, right? I mean, the object store stuff, we should be able to score regardless of the determinations on designated sections. I know that John wasn't super happy with the way the capabilities were described, but I don't know that we can do anything until we resolve where the tests are coming from.
I agree with you. So let's put in the agenda complete. Havana matrix completed.
Cool.
I think that's a really reasonable objective. Yeah, and that also means we need to coordinate with Troy to get these, figure out what these volume compute proxies are. I don't think they're core, even no matter what they are. So should be okay with that. All right, designated sections is going to take some time. This is going to bounce into that. I hate to push longer topics to the end of the meeting, but if we can do bylaws quickly, it'd be worth. It might be worth prepping for that meeting because I'm not sure if everybody's. I'm assuming the audience is small for the bylaws change meeting, but maybe it's not. Maybe Eileen made it a broader meeting than I thought. Did Eileen send that out as a broad invitation?
Yes. She got it to a lot.
Oh yeah, it went out to the whole committee. Yay! Awesome. Okay. So let me. Okay, just if my assumption on that agenda, maybe I should look at the agenda more carefully. No, okay. Was that we were going to work on the plain English version of the bylaws change?
Yeah. I won't be able to make that meeting, by the way, but I'm happy to have you guys carry it forward.
What I'm expecting is that the goal of that meeting is to come to the face-to-face with the bylaws change, right? With the
Makes sense.
and then we can, it really is for community review at that point. Does anybody, knowing that that's coming, have concerns? We'll put together an Etherpad and we'll circulate the plain English. And the TC actually did a good job of stating some of this, so I'm hoping to start from what they wrote. Anybody have a link to that?
Not handy.
If I can find it, I'll do it. Okay. All right. Actually, I'm going to take a second just to review what the expectation here is that the DefCore controls the just to make sure everybody's on the same page. The rub on this was that we need to make it. We have to have a bylaws change because we're moving to a process-focused way of doing the core definition instead of project-based, and so we need to define that in the bylaws. And there had been some discussion about what type of governance controls there are on the changes to the process. And that was sort of where the rub was. The process is basically what we've been defining with the principles and the criteria and the scoring mechanism, and that we put together a matrix every release cycle and codifying those things into the bylaws. And then there'd been flexible so that there was a way to make changes to the process without a bylaws change.
Yeah, so, Rob, this is Todd.
Hey, Todd.
How much of that really needs to go in the bylaws, and how much could be a process document that the bylaws point to?
That was actually one of the big breakthroughs was that we were going to make it an appendix. And then people could review the appendix.
Okay, because it certainly would be easier in the future if only the really important parts were in the bylaws, and the rest of the procedural things were documented in a document that allowed us for change without having to go to votes and things like that.
Exactly. And one of the realizations we had when we were talking about this before the summit was we actually think we have enough information to write down the process as an appendix and let people just be like, oh, okay, this is what they're doing. It makes sense. The bylaws can just say, much more general, follows the appendix.
We're saying the same thing. We're saying appendix. I was thinking you wanted to append something suddenly to the bylaws, but no problem. I understand now.
No, it's a reference document. Yeah, I don't want it to be part of the bylaws.
Got it. Thank you.
That's the.
So, Rob,
it's a designated section. Sorry, bad joke.
Yeah, the horrible joke. The open question then is, what process or procedure is required to change the contents of the appendix that is the process that DefCore uses? Mm-hmm. And, I mean, as a straw man, a board vote. As an even weirder straw man, a board vote that required a majority of each class of board director.
Right.
I like the first proposal.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be somehow tied to class. Especially since we have lots of individual members represented. I think class doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we'd originally had a naive assumption that gold members would end up being small companies and platinum members would end up being large companies, and that did not end up actually being the case. So I think class is probably irrelevant at this point.
Yep.
Okay.
And we'll talk through those things. I know one of the things that we talked about was having the TC as a community representative be involved in some capacity for this also.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I really do.
Okay. I think that's enough. I'm happy to keep talking about it, but I just wanted to stage it so that when the bylaws committee met about this, that we understood what the topic was and sort of where it was going directionally.
So, sorry, this is Alan. Can you clarify that last statement a little bit? Have the TC involved? Are you saying involved in the vote? Or
no, in giving comment and direction on any change that would be occurring. At least that's how I had understood it from discussions in the past.
I guess I was thinking we already have that because for something to get to this point in the process has had a ton of TC involvement. So I'm not disagreeing. I'm just trying to understand what was meant by that statement, because it seems like the TC and the PTLs have been heavily involved.
No, this is just in future cases where we would want to amend or change the DefCore process. We're saying such a change would require a board vote, but it also would require the TCs to be included and involved in drafting whatever the proposed change was.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were referring to something totally different.
Yeah, no, I mean,
we could essentially have a change in the future.
Allows us to make future changes.
Yeah,
Right.
so we could have a future change, like we change, the board has decided that the repository for the information's moved over to XYZ service. Even that kind of change, we should still bring in people out of the TC involved in those sort of things. Right? And it's kind of an absurd case, right? But I'm just making something up off the top of my head.
Well, I think this caused a lot of angst because we didn't have a process when we started this that we could point to. But now we've got principles and criteria, and we sort of have a flow going with materials that people can look at, and I sense that this is not going to be as anxiety-provoking as it was when we just dove right into making bylaws changes.
Yeah.
The process that we're documenting has the TC and PTLs in it, right?
Definitely does. There's components of what we're doing that have engagement from their perspective, right? With designated sections, with the test definitions, with all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem like it's needed here, but because they're already in the thing.
The reason why I'm including it is because in earlier conversations it had been discussed that, and there was confusion over this in earlier discussions about who decided or approved or things like that. So I want to make sure that it's included in the discussion so that we can put it to bed. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So the first two bullets there are, I think, one or the other, or could be another thing, and then this one is more of a note about that as opposed to one of the choices, right?
Right. Is that right? I was just trying to note possible considerations so that people weren't surprised if we had something in the discussion. I mean, we've actually been having exactly the discussion that I was hoping to spark with it. Cool. All right. I'm ready to move off of this topic, although I'm happy to keep going if there's still questions.
Let's move.
All right. And for that, we're going to discuss the bylaws change, and then plan. Okay, good. And the tracking the scores is going to bleed into everything else. Yay! All right. Designated sections.
Let's do it.
All right. I'm not sure how to start. Michael, do you have a thought on how to kick off this discussion for us? Sorry to spring it on you.
Yeah, thanks, man. One day I'll manage to explain that it's 7 a.m. here, and I'm not sure I follow exactly what you mean by designated sections. I don't mean that in that I don't understand what a designated section is, sense, but what bit of it do you want to talk about now?
Okay. There's a couple of them. I'm looking back through what happened is in our first meeting, we had a whole bunch. I brought up the Lighthouse.1 items, where we looked at we looked at work, and we identified a whole bunch of items that we needed help with. And the first one of them is how are we going to resolve designated sections for all core capabilities? So let me pull together the questions. So there's a question is, how are we going to resolve? Actually, there's an action item here.
Is that just the scores you're missing from PTLs, or is there more to that?
No, it's not the scores. It's the actual saying these are the required components of the code itself.
Oh, yeah, okay. Do you have a list somewhere of PTLs that haven't provided that, or has basically no one provided that yet?
I don't. Nobody's provided it. So
Okay.
it's.
Sorry, can I back up? Because I'm confused.
Yeah.
I clearly missed whatever meeting it was that we determined that it was actually the PTL's responsibility and not the TC as a whole.
You're right. The process is, my understanding of the process is that the TC will decide that in consultation with the PTLs, because not all the PTLs are on the TC. But I expect that actually works out as PTLs bring a proposal to the TC, perhaps with the TC reminding them that they have to do that thing. Then the TC looks at it and says, it looks reasonable, and then forwards it on.
Gotcha.
So the TC
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Consistency, right? Because I might only be the PTL for 3 months or 6 months or whatever, right? And so, PTLs pop in and out of existence.
Yeah. Okay, so then back to the action, which is, we do need the PTLs to at least draft the first pass, or at least rubber stamp what we put forward as a straw man and say, that looks okay. I know some of them did it on that Etherpad, but I don't know that anyone was really taking it seriously. I didn't mean it to be terribly serious when I put it together.
Right.
Okay, so do you think the solution here is if someone, and I'm willing for that someone to be me, drafts like, say, a 1-paragraph request that's like, dear PTL/TC, please define the portions of your project that must be shipped to meet the DefCore requirements. Like, put it in layman's terms and keep the request as brief and concrete as possible. Do you think that would help?
Yeah, and I think if you forward them at least the link to the TC resolution on the sort of principles that should be applied, it gives them more context if they need it.
Mhm. Yeah, fair point. Look, I'll draft a paragraph and then I'll send it to you guys, and you can tell me whether or not you think I've got it wrong.
Okay. One of the reasons why I think the blog post is important and some of these other questions are important is they're going to turn around to you and say, how do I deliver that to you? And I think we should either we need to make it as part of the face-to-face, or it's a TC. It's probably a TC agenda item of how we actually want that delivered.
Yeah, fair point.
Well,
and how do we describe it to vendors? Is it just free-form text? A paragraph that says, Nova says you must ship, I don't know, every hypervisor driver, picking a random straw man. Or is it more concrete and we somehow give them something that, is testable in an engineering manner? So we have to work out exactly what we're handing over to the vendors as well, I think.
It's a definition of form.
A definition of what?
But in the end, so it's not going to be architected to a module, right? Or is it? Will we be able to specifically point to key things and maybe even key dependencies and mark it in the code base?
I don't want to say that will always be possible, because we don't know, right? Because we haven't seen what people want to try and do. The bit that concerns me is ultimately this is going to end up being something that people will want to hold vendors to, right? And so it's got to be relatively concrete, or or a bad actor could weasel word around, we define scheduler in a slightly strange way to avoid doing the thing or whatever, right? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, That's why it gets down to, something that's marked in the code base almost is really the only reasonable way to manage it, because then there's no ambiguity.
Yeah, I just don't know how we mark it in the code base.
Yeah, I know. We would have to be invented, but I'm just.
So can we do the thing that we always do in DefCore, which is kick the ball down the road and say, as a first pass for ISO/Juno time frame, it's going to be free-form text that describes in reasonably actionable terms the modules or sections that we believe are designated, and then look at it in the next cycle as far as how can we refine that and make it more testable?
I think that's a reasonable approach, right? Because we actually don't have any bad actors at the moment. So I don't want to spend 60 years solving a problem that doesn't actually exist. But even if it's prose, I think it has to be relatively concrete. So that's more a test that the DefCore committee needs to apply when we receive these things. We might hypothetically have to go back to someone and say, we need that to be a little bit more concrete.
Yeah, and I wasn't really on the point of this from a bad actor standpoint. I was more on the point of being able to then go back to my guys working on tests and say, here, go make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, fair point.
Yeah.
I think Josh is right, though. I think that you can, for the most part, you're going to be able to say the scheduler, no, the scheduler. It's not designated. We're done. Or, that the people have an understanding of what these sections are, and the ones that aren't, then we'll get concrete and we'll have to we'll actually have to put markers in the code. But I think for the most part, frankly, it's Apache 2 code, and people can violate it like crazy and just not use the brand. This is much more about providing guidance so that people can comply. And
okay.
If we find bad actors, then we'll have to.
I think Josh's take was right. Let's kick the can down the road, see what it looks like, give this basic, guidance right now, and then if we have to, adjust.
Okay, that brings up this, along with kicking the can down the road. For the only ones that I think we care about are the ones in which there are projects that have core capabilities. Do we want to push for everybody to provide this? Is it part of effectively a community-wide thing? Or do we just say, we just need it for these handful of projects?
I think it's just core.
Yeah, I would say let's really beg the ones that we need today, and maybe just put everyone else on notice that, hey, as part of the goal of being in core, if that is a goal or it goes along with your project, you need to kind of think about designated sections. But I think it can be longer term.
I have a more aggressive suggestion. if we want to make it 0.
Look at you and I reversing roles. I'm all like placating and taking long time and.
What's this thing? It's like Freaky Friday or something? Is that what's going on?
I don't know. Have you thought of actually starting? Rob, you need to swear. If you're going to be me, you got to start swearing right about now.
I can swear. I'll save it though.
Darn.
Gosh. I'm just
okay,
not
sorry.
mad
Go
enough
ahead.
about DefCore. What I was wondering is if we just say it's 0 for right now, and Michael, would it make it easier, give you a stick to say, hey, look, right now we're assuming there are no designated sections in your code unless you start telling us otherwise. The only problem is that contradicts what the TC said, and so that's what makes it more aggressive.
Yeah,
well, let's wait and see how we go with chasing the PTLs. If we can always, be more aggressive in a couple of weeks if we feel like it's not getting traction.
That's too, Rob.
Being aggressive puts everyone on the wrong foot.
And if nothing, I mean, Josh actually started this in that document that we had that I'd lost again. Here it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually have a draft. Frankly, it's already so. There is no reason not to just work off the draft. Good. All right. But giving people a pass for Havana is not going to help them that much because Icehouse is going to hit them in July from our workflows. So it's not saving much time. All right. Do we decide who has responsibility for deciding? We said TCs, right?
Yeah, we said the TC should ratify the PTL's proposal.
Yeah, so basically I think this will probably happen in the form of each PTL is asked to propose a review in Garrett against the governance repo, and they'll go through our lightweight voting process. Now, the biggest impact for you guys is that probably delays the world by at least a week, right? Because Terry only approves patches in that repo at meetings. But it gives us a nice documented, the following people tick the box kind of process.
Yeah.
But that would also mean that you end up with a Garrett document that can get reviewed.
Yes, and it also gives you something where you have some visibility into what's being discussed before it's agreed. It's not happening in a smoky back room.
So effectively what we're saying is that the +2 by the TCs from PTL's proposal. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to get all technical, the only person who can +2 is the TC chair, so Terry. All the other TC members will +1, and then normal people can't vote but can comment. And we have a strong habit of paying attention when people comment without voting.
I actually think we've just defined the process.
Well, that's what's really well with what the TC is already doing, so it doesn't require a lot of explaining or anything like that.
Exactly. All right. Are people happy with this? I think that we can actually lock this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can incorporate that into the process document. I'm pretty happy with that. All right. So, wow. All right. Okay. So we said we're gonna do a friendly ask for now, led by Michael. Designated sections. We've agreed to leave this text, which is good. We've decided who has the right who's deciding, and we're saying we're focusing on core capabilities for Havana. There's actually a decision in this which is saying that you don't need designated sections. From a branding perspective, we're saying you don't need designated sections if you don't have a core capability. I'd actually like to document that as a decision.
Yeah, but I think what we still need to encourage PTLs to develop designated sections for their project over time in anticipation of the day that it might land in core.
Right. Could you rephrase what I said though? I just want to make sure that that what we're saying.
Well, I'll put it under the friendly ask for now, which will be that PTLs of projects that don't currently have any core capabilities aren't yet on the hook for designated sections. That
right.
makes sense? But we'll encourage them to develop preemptively. Cool.
So I'm actually doing something a little bit stronger in the as an actual decision out of the DefCore committee. And maybe we should vet this. But I think
see. So you're talking about vendors. I was talking about what the PTLs needed to work on. But yes, if there is no core capabilities, the vendors are not required to include anything. In other words, if there's a project that has designated sections but no core capabilities, the designated sections do not apply.
Yes, and that's something that is in this post, right? It's in the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, this is it's an obvious assumption but I wanted to be explicit so that nobody's like, oh, we're designating all this code. Now you have to designate in your OpenStack product because it's
Don't use
designated.
designate as an example.
Oh.
You're just being mean. You're just being mean.
That was Trove. Yeah, that was horrible.
Oh, that's coming.
You're using Trove. It has designated sections, and you don't have to include Trove just because it has designated code, because it doesn't have core capabilities. It's the intersection of both.
Yeah.
It's obvious. I just wanted to be explicit because designated sections has the sound of you must have this code.
Right.
All right. Wow. Okay. Could we actually have resolved this?
Yes.
Michael, do you anticipate any serious angst or consternation from the TC on this?
Not at this point, I don't think so. I guess that's my giant moment to be famously wrong now, but I think it'll be okay.
I've been paying attention to the dialogue, and I don't think I'm not expecting any either, but people surprised. Cool. 15 minutes to go.
Okay. What do we got left?
And I've accomplished. Maybe we should stop because this is the major deliverable for the meeting. All right. In the last meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about tracking the criteria score.
Yeah.
Capability.
I merged your patch, but I don't think it was sufficient.
Oh, good. It's not. It was just a starting point.
Yeah. Okay.
No, totally not. Josh was talking. I made a change to the JSON file where we track the required tests to add the criteria in. I haven't put in the scores yet. That was the next step. But I ended up doing a whole bunch of screenshots. Actually, which we could. Do we want to talk about some of the UI stuff? We probably should in the face. We can, if we have time permitting.
I would just save it for the RefStack meeting unless it's really relevant for the DefCore committee. I mean, I would say we know that we need to track it. Let's make sure that we're building tools to support tracking it, and when we have tools, let's present them and get feedback.
So what I would do is I would add. I meant to do this, and I forgot to send out the reviews. So I'll send those out so people can look at the reviews for the UI stuff that we're building to track scores. That'll.
Cool.
So if you're curious about what those things look like, read the reviews. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the right way to backtrack this conversation without repeating the whole thing. We spent a fair bit of time talking about how we were going to track release by release updates to criteria scores for capabilities. And the TCs.
Just saying.
I'm sorry.
JSON files in Git. Just saying.
That's where what we thought to do was to do it as JSON, right? Via Garrett.
If it's in a Git repo, you just say to all of the PTLs, yo dog, when you're updating your scores, just send us a review for the tweaks.
And that was, and maybe this is that simple. So it's a little bit cumbersome because it's a pretty big file, but since we don't expect it to change much release to release, it seems like once we've got them preloaded, making a copy for the next release, you would expect only a small handful of tests to go under review.
Yep.
So, right. I'm trying to think of the.
Just a warning: the number of tests between Havana and Icehouse more than doubled.
Yay!
Great.
But the number of capabilities probably did not.
True.
So we're
True.
still scoring the capabilities. We're just going to have to rebuild the capabilities list every time, which is awesome because we get Troy to do it.
Well, so this might be a structural change because right now there's an assumption that the tests inherit from this is why I stopped, Josh. The core tests are the things that we had thought originally would carry the score, not the capabilities. And so in the future, it would be possible for a test and a capability to not be core, but most of the other ones to be core. I'm okay if we want to roll that back and move it up to capabilities, but
yeah, I think we need to score capabilities forever. I do not think we want to get down the road of scoring individual tests, even storing it as a data format. I think we'll go insane. Because we do need the scores to actually reflect meta things like, are there enough tests to represent that this is stable and complete? That's not a characteristic of the test. It's a characteristic of the capability.
Right. So this is a change, and I think it's a reasonable. Do we score tests or capabilities? The reason why I hesitate on that is that I'm worried that you're going to get tests inside of a capability that don't make sense or don't always pass, or they're much more configuration specific. And
so we need a null capability, or I think we need if there are tests that represent a specific configuration, that's a separate capability. It's not part of the same capability. And we may find that when we have scenarios where all of the tests pass except for one, that means the capabilities are set up wrong.
I'm not sure I followed that. Argument. That sounds pretty dangerous.
Yeah. Josh,
well, the argument is if there's a test that only works in Zen, then it's not part of the capability of Nova Compute. It's part of Nova Compute Zen. That's the capability.
I agree, but yeah, we wouldn't want to have 20 billion capabilities because of all of these things.
Yeah,
right.
I don't.
That's the argument to say tests should not be being written in a fashion where they only pass in one configuration. They should be written such that the test itself is doing the right thing based on what the configuration is.
So the capability shouldn't be defined in such a way that those particular kinds of tests tweak it. The test is good.
I don't think there's that much overhead in if we've scored the capabilities now, then the tests inherit that in this pass. And then if new tests come into the capability.
We can't reverse it. If we start scoring tests we have to score tests forever and then somehow combine and roll up the scores to the capabilities again. Yeah. I think you're taking us down a rat hole. I'm terrified of this course of action. There are 800 tests. We rolled up to 75 capabilities. We never would have gotten through the scoring if we were scoring tests. I
know. I am not 100% sold on this, but I am worried about the other direction also.
So, but again, the argument is we need a place to put tests that should not ever be considered part of core. So in other words, a null bucket. The logic that all tests should roll up to capabilities that are scored, maybe there are some tests that should never be considered.
Agreed.
In other words, RefStack is built to allow skipping tests. Maybe DefCore should also allow skipping tests.
So why don't we do this as a compromise then? Why don't we, in the capabilities, have the sort of the required tests and the optional tests inside of a capability? That would satisfy what I'm looking for, would satisfy what you're looking for, and that way if new tests came into a capability, they would come into that category, and then it would be pretty easy to review the few tests that you might want to promote inside the capability. Because you'd look at the core capabilities, and then you'd look at the the optional tests, and that would effectively let you elevate them.
I would rather not have optional and just say skipped. It's either must pass or not must pass. I mean, that's the principles we voted on, right? If they're must pass tests, we talk about them. If it's not a must pass test, it's a might pass test, I just don't care. I don't think it should have any influence on this score for a test that only passes in some configurations.
Yeah, it
Right,
shouldn't have any implication on the score, but it's something where in like the local stuff you can run it and whatnot, but for DefCore, no implication. I agree with Josh.
I mean, we're talking about testing for interop, and if there are capabilities that only work in certain configurations, that's not providing interop. That's not what we decided core is.
Okay, so what we're saying is inside of a capability, this actually simplifies things. I like it. We have a set of must-pass.
So Josh, I tend to agree with you. Can I clarify though?
Yeah, please.
If we had, and I can't even think of a case. I'm just trying to. So let's say, for example, the test pass if you have a 4 megabyte VM, but it fails if you have a 4 gigabyte VM. Would we have two different capabilities there, or how would you?
Well, no, it's more. Let's say,
or would we somehow say the capability is scoped, or do we scope the capability and say the capability only covers the case where the VM is of 4 megabytes or smaller?
Yeah, we would have a capability that's called small VMs or a capability called big VMs. So let's use a real case, live migration. And rather than saying live migration is part of the Nova Compute capability, we'd say it has to be a separate capability because it's known to work in Xen and not KVM, or VMware and not Hyper-V, or whatever. It is hypervisor specific, which means it can't be part of typical interop unless the vast majority of deployments support it. And it might be that we want all those tests in there. We want to be gathering the data because there may come a date where every hypervisor passes that test. But it should be a separate capability because if it only works in some configurations, it can't be the core capability. I don't think we're going to have a ton of these.
What I'm hoping is that we will see. I'm hoping to see vendor-specific tests and things like that come in, and it makes sense that people are going to submit them around core capabilities. In some cases, they're going to want to make them core, and this gives us an avenue to make something a must-pass test in a capability, but not yet, like it's a candidate.
I don't understand what you just said. Can you rephrase it?
So let's say we took a must-pass test, Nova Volume. Or not Nova Volume, Nova Flavors. And that capability is a core capability, and somebody writes a new test against it. That test may or may not be a core test. We need to actually say, well, we need to review if this test becomes a core part of that capability, but it's clearly part of the capability. We just don't know if it's must-pass or not.
No.
And so
No, the tests that are part of a capability, we're not scoring tests, we're scoring capabilities. We made that decision ages ago. And capabilities are must pass, which means all of the tests that are part of that capability are must pass. There's no optional. If there's a new test added that fails, it either means that capability shouldn't have been core, or it means that there's a new capability implied by that test, and that test should not have been put into the old capability.
Or it could mean that there's something that passes in a configuration set that's in gate or common that doesn't match for other people. Josh, I think we need a way to bring new tests into capabilities. There has to be a vetting process to do that.
Yes, I agree, but I don't think it's a case of putting the tests in and calling them optional. I think it's a case of having them in a bucket it's putting them in and calling them skipped until it's determined that they're actually part of that capability and that they're a representative test. In other words, that it is the functionality that's broken and not the test that's broken.
I don't like the word skip.
But that's what it's called.
The tests are being run. We're going to have data on them. They're basically no NAs or unanalyzed or not. I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily want to call it core and non-core. Although, I mean, we have must pass and optional, provisional, advisory.
It makes me queasy to have the idea of tests inside a capability that is a must-pass capability but has not must-pass tests. They don't belong there. They're like. I don't know.
I see. I understand your argument and agree with the argument, but my concerns about how we get new tests into capabilities makes me wary of automatic, of being so binary. I like it. I see. Go ahead, Rocky.
The new tests would come in at the release point. So, Icehouse, the capability includes all of these tests. Juno, there's a larger set of tests that must be met.
Mm-hmm.
And so, those tests would be for each new release. Unfortunately, well, actually, the test should be. We talked to QA about this. The test should be delineated so that they aren't special functions such as then or extensions or whatnot. And as long as the tests are well segregated, then the new test decision should be fairly straightforward and can be run ahead of time. We can actually do Garrett gating on whether the test really is generic or not. So at each release, there'd be the test could change.
Right. So how about this? Let's have a bucket that's part of that JSON file. That's all of the tests that are not yet part of capabilities. And then let's use patches submitted against that file to propose tests should become part of capabilities. And the process of accepting that patch should probably be a bunch of vendors running RefStack and seeing if that test passes on the configurations they care about. Because if it doesn't, they're about to get flunked out of being core certified.
Right.
And that way, if there's a test that a vendor thinks isn't written properly so that it does cause a fail that it shouldn't be, then they could file a bug against that test. Same process.
We've raised up enough issues and had a good enough discussion that I don't think we're ready to decide it, but I think that we are ready to carry a very good discussion into the face-to-face. And I would ask.
And we're after 3, and I've got to run. I've got a hard stop.
Yeah, no, I want to respect the time of the meeting, but fantastic dialogue. We really hit some key issues with this. So I'll document what I can, and we'll make it an agenda item in the face-to-face. Josh, let's go ahead and start at 10 on the face-to-face.
Okay.
And
seems like we've got enough. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody, great meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.